All over the United States of America, black voters are losing enthusiasm for the Democratic Party. Because of this, the Democrats have responded by running a number of black candidates who, on the surface, look very pro black. They look very serious about, at least they say they're very serious about helping the black community. However, in reality, they probably are not, due to the nature of the Democratic Party itself, right? On top of that, the Democrats, the Democratic leadership is not actually totally committed to running these candidates. They're kind of in two minds about it because they know if they go too far with that, they will scare away non-white and especially white or non-black rather, and especially black voters that they need to win elections. So because of that, sometimes these candidates don't always get the support they think they need. So, hi everyone. I'm Shimoge, and this is Shimoge's Comments America. I was just giving you a summary of the situation outlined by the article we've been analyzing these past couple weeks. Today, what I'm going to do is finish reading and analyzing that Washington Post article about that scenario I just laid out. The article was written about 4 years ago, but it's still very relevant because, not much has changed in the country. So that situation I just described is still very much a thing. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it. Those of you who are returning viewers know that before I've been kind of given a 4 minute waiting period for people to get on the stream, but I'm trying something a little different now. I'm just getting right into it. So let me just do that. Let me share my screen with y'all. Also trying to make when I do this, I'll make the size of the shared screen and my face roughly even. I know y'all like to look at my beautiful face, and just a human being in general. Let me tweak that a little bit. Yeah, okay. And let me pull up the article. Actually, give me a second. Let's move this while I get things ready. So sorry about that, y'all. I don't want you to see everything. Let's bring this back. Bear with me, y'all. Sorry for the inconvenience. All right, and we're live. So just to recap again, what this article, what the previous parts of the article we read said. Again, outlining that scenario that I gave you earlier, except it's doing it from a really pro-democratic perspective because this is the Washington Post. So it's giving a profile of these Democratic candidates and the other black political operatives that are trying to get them elected, and really talking about their personal lives a bit, as well as giving the wider context, because the goal of this article is to humanize them and to push the democratic agenda to make people view these candidates favorably. So it did that while outlining the problem. Democrats want to make sure they don't lose black voters because they need them to win. So they're running more of these candidates, and more political operatives have popped up that are really dedicated to getting these people funded and getting them elected. However, at the same time, They don't want to go too far with it because they know if they do that, and when I say too far, I'm speaking from the perspective of Democrats who want to per- pursue their agenda and get elected. I'm not speaking from the perspective of morality, because morally, the Democrats are running a deception game, which is immoral. So if we're talking about morality, they shouldn't be doing any of this, right? They should be operating a completely different way. But from their perspective, right, if they go too far with trying to get these black candidates elected, they'll scare away non-black voters and especially white voters. So that's why also there was a push at the same time in certain areas to run white candidates. Really, what it is in areas with a lot of black people, they run these black candidates that talk like they're real pro-black. But in areas without a lot of black people, which is most of the country, then they run these candidates that'll appear more to white people who are on the fence about voting Democrat or Republican, right? So that's what they do. And then also because of that, they ain't always giving uh what is it? They ain't always giving proper funding to um sorry, give me a second. They ain't always giving proper funding to Democratic candidates or to the black candidates. They're not always promoting them as much, right? So there's this kind of interesting tension in what the Democrats are doing. Okay. Um, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me fix something. So sorry about that. It's a small thing I gotta see if I can fix here. Sorry, y'all. Bear with me. Sorry, y'all. Just got some technical difficulties here. Um, just bear with me, y'all. Okay, we back. So sorry about that, y'all. Just some kind of random technical difficulties. But we're back. So, right. Anyway, I laid out the scenario for you guys. In case you forgot. But now that we're all caught up, let's begin. I'm gonna read and pause periodically to give my analysis. Okay. Stephanie James doesn't think black voters are going to vote Republican in large numbers, but she does think that they are ready for something more than what the Democratic Party currently offers. I think there is a third party mentality, she told me in response to a question about voter independence. Black women really get this. They are the backbone of the Democratic Party and civic engagement. But black women continue to be undervalued by the Democratic Party. We need to vote for ourselves first. And let me read the caption under this photo of Andrew Gillum shaking hands with people. Andrew Gillum, a Democratic gubernatorial candidate in Florida, greets employees at the check-in desk at a panel discussion at the National Press Club in Washington on Valentine's Day. He, along with gubernatorial candidates Stacey Abrams of Georgia and David Garcia of Arizona, received the endorsement of the progressive group People for the American Way. Okay, so he's just moving and shaking there. More black voters, it appears, are exploring the concept of being independent. Pew, in a study shortly before the 2016 election, found that 23% of African American voters identified as independents, up 7 points from 2012, and identification with the Democratic Party was down slightly to 70%. Okay, so again, what that section just highlighted is that black people aren't going to go vote for Republican in large numbers. However, more of them are starting to identify as independent and just not vote Democrat. And that hurts the Democrats basically as badly as if they were Republicans anyway, because it doesn't matter who black people, or let me say it like this: as long as black people are not voting for the Democrats, no matter who else they're voting for, Democrats will not win national elections, and they also won't win elections in battleground states. Period. Okay. Gillum, who is running in a closed primary in Florida, says he hears a lot of talk about being independent, especially from young voters. Before I ask party affiliation, they are offering the fact that they aren't party affiliated. They are independent, he told me. I have to work that much harder to convince people to register as Democrats so I can make it out of this primary. Jessica Bird, 31, a former Emily's List staffer and a Movement for Black Lives activist, founded a consulting firm, 3 Point Strategies, in 2015. It works at the intersection of gender, race, and class, focusing on black female candidates, whom Bird says are often overlooked or viewed as the underdog. Black people deserve a self-determined political home, she told me. We are building one. We want to do work for our people on our terms. The Reverend William Barber, the North Carolina activist who led the Moral Mondays movement, addressed the 2016 Democratic National Convention and is co-chair of a new Poor People's Campaign, modeled on the one launched by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., also speaks to a sense of political independence. King didn't say, give us the vote and we'll vote Democratic or Republican. He said, give us the vote. In all their campaigns, they never talked about being Democrat or Republican. They talked about what was morally right. Barber is himself an independent. That's interesting because I've only ever seen that guy on MSNBC and advocating for the Democratic positions. But maybe there's more to his political beliefs and actions. I don't know. But I find that surprising. Maybe he's changed in the last 4 years. I don't know. Anyway, yet Perez said that he and Barber text a few times a week, and he read me a psalm Barber had recently texted. Perez said he admires Barber's quote-unquote fusion politics, uniting anti-poverty with anti-racism and building a multiracial coalition of voters. Okay. Yeah, okay. So again, it just surprised me that this guy Barber is not a Democrat, because everything I've seen and heard about him, including this, it sounds in line with Democratic stuff. Excuse me. I mean, so sorry. I mean, obviously, you can have an independent who believes in, say, anti-poverty and anti-racism and a multiracial coalition in isolation. But it just most people I've seen who believe in fixing like issues of racism and poverty, um, one, they might not necessarily use those terms, they'll just describe it in a different way because this sounds very like academic liberal, tend to be Democrat. But then two, most of them tend also not to separate I guess issues of poverty and issues of racism as much. Because doing that, it tends to be more in line with like I guess a kind of like either just some general centrist, center left analysis. I guess Republicans kind of do that too. They just kind of say it's not really a problem. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Or just like Marxism, right? Which again, Marxists who get politically involved tend to be Democrats, right? Um, and even the multiracial coalition. Again, most black people who are independents, I know that are not like conservative. Um, you know, they would tend to be more coming from like a black nationalist perspective, and in that perspective, multiracial coalitions don't make sense. So I'm just saying all this to say, this guy Barber, Reverend William Barber, saying he's not a Democrat, but everything he says and does sounds Democrat to me. But I haven't heard him sit down and explain his philosophy in detail. So maybe there's some wrinkles to it I don't know about. Anyway, let's keep going. I mean, even the fact that he was talking to the DNC chairman every day, that seems Democrat. But anyway, let's continue. Perez lives on the fault line of a debate about which way his party should go. Should it tack to the center or to the left? The midterm elections may tell us more about which strategy will eventually win out. We are in a moment where people are demanding greater representation, says Andra Gillespie, a political science professor at Emory University. The Democratic Party is reckoning with the demographic shift in the U.S. Both parties are going through shakeups, but we'll still have two parties when we're done. The question is what they will look like. Let me read the caption here. Supporters celebrate Democrat Doug Jones' victory in his bid for the U.S. Senate over Republican Roy Moore in Birmingham, Alabama in December last year. Black people made up 29% of the vote, surpassing their share of total voters, 28%. That's just by 1%. That's not that big. When Obama was on the ballot in 2012. Oh, okay, that's their share when Obama was on the ballot. Okay, that is significant because black turnout under Obama was crazy. Democrats across the country celebrated the role black women played in the special election for Attorney General Jeff Sessions' seat. And again, as we've talked about in previous weeks, there's that emphasis on black women specifically as a way for Democrats to both pander to black people and black women while also, um, just unfairly criticizing the black community by putting this focus on black men who supposedly don't vote for them enough, even though we vote for them more than anyone other than black women. So, just part of their chess game there. But I want to go back to this. Um, this lady, Andra Gillespie, says that there's a democratic graphic shift in the U.S. And she thinks that there's still going to be two parties when those demographic and political shifts are finished. It's just they'll look different. I would disagree with that. I think there's a lot of things that could happen, but assuming that the United States stays together, which of course is not a guarantee, assuming the United States stays together, these parties can definitely split. Okay, because really, there are you can say um 5 or 6 large political factions in the U.S. Really, I'll just say there are five political factions, and these are all different white groups, right? And then what you have is just different non-whites who um, kind of join various groups depending on who they think their interests align with, which of course is always a mistake because the interests don't really align, but that's just a confusion there, right? But anyway, there's really five groups, right? Because the Republican Party is made up of two different political factions. The Democratic Party is made up of two different political factions, right? And then you have white independents, right? I mean, all these factions are really dominated, and the driving force behind them is white people. But then it's just you have confused non-whites joining them, right, to make up some of their numbers. But anyway, a lot of the factions that are within the parties are getting tired of being together, so they could very much break up. A simple way of seeing what I'm saying is if you just look at, say, the division among the Democrats between, say, Bernie voters and Biden voters in the last election, and then in the previous two elections, the difference between, um, the Republican establishment and the alt right Trump voters, right? Those people could go their separate ways easily. Um, so yeah, let's continue. There was a period recently, the Jameses say, when money was so tight they decided one of them needed a conventional job. Stephanie applied for several and was a finalist for a DNC position. She interviewed with Perez, but ultimately another black woman was hired. It was a blessing, she said. We're doing the work we're supposed to be doing. Quentin was with Fairfax when the November election returns came in. I met his mom, his brothers, all Ivy League grads who came up in DC when it wasn't like it is now. I was remembering what we saw in Charlottesville in the summer, he said, but here was Fairfax making history. Okay, and just another note here, noting that Justin Fairfax family members are all Ivy League grads, and I mean, I'm also an Ivy League grad, but I ain't rep it like that. But anyway, all I'm just saying here is that obviously, if you're a black person and you went to an Ivy League school, your life experience is different than that of most black people. So again, this idea that all these black people they're running are just average, regular, degular Joes, whatever, at least among black people, just not true, right? And unfortunately, generally speaking, obviously there are exceptions. I would say I'm an exception. But generally speaking, right, if you're black and you've been through that path, you've gone to the Ivy League, whatever, unfortunately, you tend to have a more anti-black mentality than average. And then that comes out in what you do and how you move politically and just in life, right? So if you have a situation where all the political candidates that are trying to represent black people um, have been through these environments, they're not going to represent black people well. So again, this is just another example of how the narrative this article is trying to push is just not true. At least when it comes to those black candidates really being average black people who are down for the people. Okay. All right. Let's go. Not long after the Alabama win, Quentin was picking up Carter from school when his cell phone rang. Hello, Quentin. This is Hillary Clinton, the caller said. if you black, you get that call and it doesn't scare the life out of you, something's wrong with you. But let's keep going. She wanted to talk about the collective PAC's work and to let him know that her political group, Onward Together, was awarding the organization a $75,000 grant. With the help of at Collective PAC, Clinton would later tweet, 23 African American candidates have been elected to local, state, and federal offices since August 2016, right? So obviously this shows that to an extent, these people are getting backed by the Democratic establishment. But what it really is, and I don't think I stated this perfectly the last 2 weeks. So let me state it clearly here when I was talking about how the Democratic Party is um, not completely committed to these candidates. What it really is they're all behind running them in mostly black areas, right? Because it's good for them to put black faces in front of us so that we get deceived into thinking that we actually run our communities when we don't, right? They're just figureheads. So that's why they really support them here, because they don't want the enthusiasm for the Democrats to go down in mostly black areas. Because especially if those mostly black areas are in a swing state, they need every vote to win, especially depending on the structure of the state, especially if, say, it's a black neighborhood in a county that kind of swings, right? Then they really need the votes. But even if it's not a swing area, they want as many black people as possible to vote Democrat so that they win the popular vote by as high a margin as possible. And then that legitimizes their rule. And even if they lose, they get to go, hey, we won the popular vote. Let's switch to a straight up popular vote, right? And that's why you see Democrats pushing for that straight up popular vote. Which, for the record, I mean, again, I think there's so much wrong with the way the United States is structured that just giving it the popular vote wouldn't even scratch the surface. But um, you know, if we were to have a popular vote, that would be better and more fair than what we have now, right? Because electoral college is just an even worse system than the popular vote. So because not that popular vote on principle is a bad system, it's just that the US is too big, basically. So having like just having a country of over 350 million people is kind of crazy, especially if they're spread over such a large land mass, you know. Maybe if we were all in, somehow if you could fit that many people in a city, I don't know how you could do it. um Maybe just because it's a small area you can make it work, but um I don't even see how that would be possible. That I don't see how that would be possible. It just too many people in one country. It needs to be broken up into smaller units, so it could be governed better, or so that the people rather can govern themselves better. But with all that being said, right, um, if you're gonna have a system where people vote, it's best for it to just be a straight up popular vote instead of this weird electoral college minority rule thing we got going on, right? At least the potential from, at least it opens the door to minority rule, and that often happens, just like it did in 2016. Um, but anyway, right? So yeah, anyway, this shows that obviously if Hillary Clinton and her group are backing these people, the Democratic establishment is giving these people backing. But why they're not totally happy is because when these black candidates then want to run in whiter areas, or they want to represent an area where there are a lot of white people, say they want to win a statewide race, say they want to become the governor, the senator, right? Then they're not getting backed, right? Because they know, the Democrats know that, you know, if they elect black people to rule over white people, or if they try and do that, a lot of white people aren't going to vote for them. And then if too many of the minority of white people who do vote Democrat decide not to, the Democrats will also lose. So that's what's going on here. Let's read the last paragraph, wrap it up. Now the collective pack, along with everyone else, is looking ahead to the midterms and beyond. During a late weekend in February, the Jameses, Shropshire, Thompson, and others were in Atlanta. Shout out to Atlanta. For a conference on black women that focused on issues such as economic and political empowerment. Its title, the Power Rising Summit. And ain't that something? They're doing a conference on black women specifically, and then they want to talk about issues that don't affect black women in isolation, such as economics and political empowerment. Because again, there's no way you can just empower one half of a community and the whole community um, is going to be healthy. That just doesn't work. And then even worse, they're not actually, of course, empowering black women. This is just pandering. And even the title, the Power Rising Summit, it's deceptive. It makes people think that, um, at least they're trying to give off the image that black people are gaining more power within the system when that is not happening. So all in all, that just another instance of them pandering. And again, I want to make it clear when I'm criticizing how the Democrats are pandering to black women, I'm not pushing some sort of, I feel bad that I even have to say this. It's just this kind of, these dumb narratives are all over the internet now, especially YouTube with the rise of the manosphere, especially the black manosphere, but I feel like I just have to say this. I'm not pushing some sort of woman hating black manosphere narrative that black women have more privilege than black men and that they rule over us in a gynocracy or whatever just craziness those people be talking. That's not what I'm saying, right? Because um really, if we're being real, the way Democrats pander to black women, conservatives and Republicans, to the degree they pander to black people at all, they don't as much in general, but to the degree they do, they pander to black men more, right? So if you want to look at overall who white people are pandering to, you can't say it's just black women, right? And then on top of that, like that's just in terms of um what's happening in terms of electoral politics. If you look throughout other aspects of society, there's it's way more complicated, different, you know, black men, black women get hurt in different areas, right? So it overall, everyone is just in an equally bad state. It's just you get hurt in different ways. But I'm just saying all that to say, all I'm talking about when I'm calling out this the way black or Democrats are pandering to black women, is just I'm highlighting how a certain segment of the white power structure is pandering to black women, right? This isn't a universal thing. And of course, just because you're being pandered to doesn't mean you're privileged. Because again, they're black women are not actually getting anything tangible from Democrats. The same way no black people, period, are getting anything tangible from Democrats. So I just want to make that very clear because I don't want anyone to think I'm just like young Kevin Samuels or something talking about politics. Hate that I even have to say all that, but it's just those idiots are all over the place. So I just gotta let people know what it is. Um, but yeah, anyway, that's all. That's the article. Our last two live streams were over an hour. This one obviously going to be a lot shorter, but that's okay. Sometimes it's good to just do things quickly. Um, so yeah, if no one has any questions or comments, and it doesn't look like anyone does, I'm just gonna give my final thoughts on it. So obviously, I've been saying it over and over, but just to reiterate again, what that article shows us, because again, it was written 4 years ago, but everything it's talking about is still going on. What that article shows us is that Democrats are they need black votes to win elections, but they're worried that black people's enthusiasm for them is dropping because they haven't done anything for black people, and black people are cluing in, right? So black voter turnout is dropping. That hurts Democrats. So as a response to that, they've been running more black candidates that look and sound outwardly pro-black, and then also certain black people see the opportunity and they run as these candidates, and then other black people support these candidates, right? Try and get them elected because they know if they get elected, they're gonna get a bag, right? But these black candidates are not actually gonna do anything to help black people, both because the Democratic Party's not going to let them, right? Because helping black people is against the Democrats' actual agenda. And then on top of that, you know, most likely, if you really wanted to help black people, you probably would know what the Democrats are doing, and you probably wouldn't run as a Democrat like that. Um, and certainly, if you ran, you wouldn't be getting all this support like these candidates are, right? So that's what's going on. However, they don't. The Democratic establishment doesn't want to overdo that, and for them overdoing that means running these candidates outside of black areas, right? Because they just want these candidates in black areas to get black people excited, get us enthusiastic, but they don't want to, run a black candidate in a white area, or run a black candidate even if it's a in a say a state where there are a lot of black people, but it's still might majority white, right? They don't want to run the black candidates there because that'll scare away their non-white voters, and especially their white voters who they do still need to get elected as well. And that's why there's actually been a strategy the Democrats have been pursuing at the same time to elect in white areas white candidates that are more appealing to white independents, but then also certain far right, like Trump voters who strangely are open to voting for Democrats. Like we've all seen the phenomenon of Obama Trump voters and also Bernie Trump voters, right? People who voted for both at different times, or people who switched from voting for one to the other, seem like opposites. But people are open to voting for them, and they're not really opposites. I'll do another video in the future, probably another several videos explaining how they're not really opposites. So it makes sense that people would hop between them. But anyway, they just happen to be in opposing political parties, right? So it seems strange to people on first look. But anyway, I'm just saying all that to say that the Democrats have also been trying to pander to those voters with kind of white candidates that are more conservative than normal. And then also, they haven't been supporting black candidates when they want to run in those areas with the white voters they want to get a little bit more of, right? Um, so that's upset these black candidates and the political operatives supporting them. And then also, in the time since that article was written, we've kind of seen the unfortunately, that the Democrats have succeeded in this strategy, because they actually won the last presidential election by pandering a bit more to those white voters who were on the fence, right? They ran kind of more conservative Democratic candidates like Joe Biden, increased their share of the white vote, still a minority of the white vote, but higher than in previous elections. And at the same time, by pandering, even though they haven't reached Obama levels of black turnout and enthusiasm. I don't know if they'll ever do that again because that was an exceptional time. But even though they're not there, they still have very high levels of black turnout and black enthusiasm for Democrats. At least they've been able to get that at the presidential elections. The way they've done that is by running and allowing they've been sorry the way they've done that is by running these black Democratic candidates who seem pro-black but they're not really, and then also allowing some of them to run more than they would in the past, and then also just using fear tactics, right? Which isn't quite something they maybe at some point in the article, I need to remember, maybe at some point in the article, they kind of alluded to those fear tactics, which is just like basically going, oh, the Republicans are terrible. Yeah, you don't like us, but they're worse. Right? So that's the fear tactic. So that's the other way they got the black turnout up. But, the main main avenue for doing that was focused on this article was running those candidates, right? So anyway, I think it's very important to understand all that so that we as black people who live in America, and also moral people in general, because I know unfortunately the vast majority of non-black people don't really care about black people, but if you're a non-black and you're listening to this, you have some good moral character. Think about it. If you're bucking the trend, do it. More power to you. But yeah, if you're just someone who wants to do the right thing, wants to help black people, especially if you're a black person who wants to help yourself, your community, your family, you live in the U.S., it's important to know these things because we got to know how we move. And I think this article, another thing, even though the article obviously is trying to get more black people to vote Democrat, I think ironically it's another example of why we shouldn't do it because they pander to us time and time again. They push for us to vote for them. They promise they'll do all this stuff and they don't do it, right? So we end up just wasting our political leverage by voting for them. And there are things in that article, even though they didn't intend it, but there are things in that article that I highlighted that even show that, right? Even just the fact they're not willing to, uh, you know, support Democratic candidates who might want to run a different area. That shows you they're still committed to maintaining white power. Okay. Anyway, let me begin to wrap up. Those are my thoughts on the article. This has been the end of an article analysis, 3 weeks running. Please check out the previous 2 live streams I did on this and a lot parts 1 and 2. Those are also on the channel. Please like the video and share it with people you know. And then also, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If you're on any of our other platforms and the terminology is different, because I'm going live on YouTube right now, but the replay of this video is going to be up on Facebook, Instagram, just about everywhere you can think. Please follow my page, my account, so that you can continue to see my content. And then if you're on YouTube, hit the bell icon on the channel as well, so that whenever I upload, you get a notification so you'll know when I'm posting. And if you're interested in reading the article more yourself, the link to the article is in the description of the video. And then if you also want to support the channel, please hit a link that's in the description to donate. And I'll just go ahead and put it in the live chat as well. Give me a second. Hold up. Sorry. Oh, whoa, whoa. Oh, whoa, whoa. Sorry, I was just listening to the card at 3 before this. Just taking a trip back in time. Yeah, so the link to donate to support me, help me in my efforts, it's in the description of the video, and if you're on YouTube, it's also in the live chat now. So yeah, really appreciate if you do that. And remember, I do these live streams every week on Monday on this channel, this YouTube channel, at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time plus African time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time plus African time. Today, the African time took us to a little before 4. It was like 3:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But just, if you have a good sense for African time, just check in at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time plus African time. If not, maybe ask a friend who does, or just around 12, just kind of look at the channel. Make sure you, if you subscribe, also hit the bell. You'll get notified when I'm going live. I'll also notify you. And then if for some reason you're not able to catch the live stream live, then please, if you follow our account, follow my channel on all platforms, you can watch the replay. All right. So anyway, that's all for this week. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.